Gallows Road Multimodal Study. I'm also joined by Tim Koods, who is co-managing the study, Mike Garcia, our planning section chief, and Maggie Chi, our analysis team lead. I and Tim would like to give you a quick overview of the study before we get into Q&A for participants who were not able to attend the in-person meetings. We hosted 3 in-person meetings last month, this being our second round of outreach as part of this study. The presentation materials from the in-person meetings are available on our study website, and also there is audio recording of the presentations available on our webpage. Before we begin the meeting, I'd like to review some guidelines so everyone can participate and get the most out of this meeting. We will answer all questions at the end of the presentation. The chat feature is enabled. You may choose to type your question into the chat either at the end of the presentation, or you may submit your questions along the way during the presentation, which will be addressed after the presentation. You may also choose to raise your hand that you can see on the top bar of the team screen and speak to ask a question after the presentation. And if you're on your phone, you can push *5 to raise your hand. When we call on you using the last 4 digits of your phone, you can start speaking and ask your question. When you're finished, please push *6 and then *5 to lower your hand. With that, the high-level overview today includes a recap on the study background, purpose, and the process we use to conduct the study, give an update on future conditions with transportation improvement alternatives, go over the possible options for bicycle and pedestrian bridge across the Beltway, and give you an update on next steps and schedule. Our survey is live and will be open until the end of this month, and we are looking for feedback from the community to build a preferred concept along the Gallows Corridor. Some background on the study here and how this came about. As part of the adoption of site-specific plan amendment within the Merrifield Suburban Center, we are conducting a comprehensive study of multimodal transportation improvements along Gallows Road Corridor from Tysons in north to Greater Annandale in south. For the ease of analysis and outreach, the corridor was divided into 3 segments. Segment 1, also called the northern segment, as you can see here in green, is between Route 7 and I-66. Segment 2, the middle segment in blue, is the corridor between I-66 and I-495. Segment 3, the southern segment, is in red, is between I-495 and Columbia Pike and Little River Turnpike. Here's an overview of the study process. We completed existing conditions analysis, and after receiving community feedback, we are testing future improvement alternatives, with each alternative focusing on different modes of travel, including active transportation, focusing on pedestrian bicycle travel improvements, transit alternative, and vehicle-focused alternative. After receiving public feedback on the alternatives, we will have recommendations for a preferred concept for the entire corridor, addressing the different needs for each segment of the Gallows Corridor. We will then wrap up the study with near-term and long-term recommendations with a 3rd round of public outreach, possibly to be held in spring of 2025. Quick overview of the characteristics of the improvement alternatives. For vehicle-focused alternative 1, we are looking at the design changes that influence driver behavior to improve safety, which could be achieved by visually narrowing the corridor, by reducing the lane widths to reduce the speeds. For transit alternative 2, the goal is to improve reliability, increase frequency, and enhance connectivity. Some of the improvements to achieve this would include dedicated bus lane for bus rapid transit with transit signal priority, along with bus boarding islands, and provide better bus stop amenities. The active transportation alternative will include high-quality bicycle and pedestrian facilities, and the facilities in general will include wide sidewalks, high-visibility crosswalks, cycle tracks, and refuge islands. Getting into the design aspect and the cross-section for the alternatives, and going by the segment here, some of the existing characteristics are listed here for the northern segment, showing the sample cross-section, which is representative of the segment. This is location between Cedar Lane and Electric Avenue. Again, within this segment, we know that no 2 spots are the same and the cross-sections vary, but the existing cross-section typically has 2 travel lanes in each direction, turn lanes, cycle track without safety buffer, and substandard sidewalks. This is what we are proposing for the three alternatives for this segment. The current comprehensive plan includes widening to make the segment a 6-lane roadway, but instead of widening, we are looking at keeping it a 4-lane roadway with the community preferred alternative, overriding the current comprehensive plan recommendations for a 6-lane configuration. For vehicle-focused alternative, we are looking at 2 travel lanes in each direction, reducing the inside travel lane width to 10 feet to reduce the vehicle speeds. And this will also include wider bicycle lane, landscape panels to plant trees, and about 5-foot sidewalks on both sides of the roadway. This will include exclusive left turns at certain intersections based on the volumes. For the transit alternative, we are looking at 1 car lane in each direction and a dedicated bus lane, along with bicycle and pedestrian facilities similar to alternative 1. For the active transportation alternative 3, we are proposing the travel lane similar to alternative 1, moving the bicycle facilities to the west side with wider sidewalks and landscape panels of about 6 feet. For all the alternatives, the goal is to stay within existing right-of-way, avoiding impacts to property. Here's some characteristics of middle segment. Sample cross-section is shown here, which is representative of this segment. This is location south of Prescott Drive, south of I-66, as it is today, with 3 lanes in each direction, including turn lane with sidewalks. This is what we are proposing for the 3 alternatives for the middle segment. For vehicle-focused alternative, we are looking at similar configuration as the existing conditions for travel lanes, but with reduced lane widths, 10 feet inside lanes, 11-foot outside lanes, and 11-foot turn lanes, with shared use path and landscape panels on both sides of the roadway. For transit alternative, we are looking at median running transit through this segment. The 3rd lane will be utilized for dedicated transit lane with sidewalks and landscape panels similar to alternative 1. For the active transportation alternative 3, we are proposing bidirectional bicycle facility on the west side with 2 travel lanes in each direction with turn lanes, shared use path, and landscape panels similar to the other alternatives. This is to show the existing characteristics of the southern part of the corridor, showing a typical cross-section here within the segment. Location is south of Aston Street, as it is today, with 2 lanes in each direction with substandard sidewalks. And this is what we are proposing for the 3 alternatives for this segment. For vehicle-focused alternative, we are looking at 2 travel lanes in each direction, reducing the inside travel lane width to 10 feet again to reduce the speeds. This will also include about 5-foot sidewalks and landscape panels for trees on both sides. For transit alternative, similar to the other segments, we are looking at 1 car lane in each direction and a dedicated bus lane. For the active transportation alternative 3, we are proposing 1 travel lane in each direction with a shared turn lane and bidirectional bicycle facility on one side of roadway. But south of Annandale and Gallows Road split, we are proposing cycle track on both sides of roadway, both on Annandale Road and Gallows Road. For the transit-focused alternative, this is showing approximate locations for BRT for the entire Gallows corridor. We are looking at connections to Tyson's West Park Transit Station in the north and Franconia Springfield Metro Station in the south, with several stops along the corridor. We are proposing around 10 stops along this corridor, and you can see more stations in the middle segment where density is the highest. We are looking at curb running BRT in the northern and southern segments and median running BRT in the middle segment. BRT would continue on Hummer Road in mixed traffic in southmost section. And if the transit alternative is selected as an element in the preferred concept, this could connect to the planned Route 7 BRT running from Tysons to West Falls Church. And the connection would occur near Tysons Mall at the proposed Fletcher Street station, with possible connection with Lincolnia south of Annandale. And the transit alternative does show that BRT increases ridership by around 10%. And the corridor currently has connector routes 401 and 402, which are the highest ridership lines in the county. And the BRT could expand the service and offer a more reliable trip. As part of Active Transportation Alternative 3, we are also looking to test off-street cycle track to reduce conflicts and delays at signals. And we have analysis results for these three alternatives with pedestrian, bicycle safety and vehicle assessments. And a recording of the analysis results is available on our study webpage. This next section will be covered by Tim. Over to you, Tim.
Thank you very much. I'm going to give a really brief overview of the alternatives, their trade-offs, their pros and cons. And if you want to take a deeper dive, I just sent in the chat the link to our website. So we have presentations from the last few public meetings on there. And then we also have some videos that, again, go into a little more detail on what we're describing here today. But essentially, alternative one, which is vehicle focused, has the fewest impacts. So we're making some minor tweaks here and there to reduce congestion at some intersections. We're widening sidewalks where we can, and incorporating some traffic calming features, namely reducing the width of travel lanes. But it doesn't substantially improve pedestrian comfort and bicycle level of traffic stress, for example. So in some of the other alternatives, Alternative 3, for example, we have a dedicated bicycle route, and then there are fewer safety countermeasures compared to alternatives 2 and 3. So while it does improve on a no-build scenario in terms of safety, alternatives 2 and 3 do a bit better in that regard. And then alternative 2, again, this is the transit-focused alternative. So the biggest benefit, obviously, is providing that reliable, fast service with the bus rapid transit system. There is a slight reduction in vehicle travel demand, we would assume, based on more people wanting to take transit. We're projecting an increase of ridership along the corridor by 10%, which is pretty significant. And it does add a pretty significant amount of safety countermeasures, so safety improvements to reduce the number of crashes over the other two alternatives. But because of the lower vehicle capacity, because we're taking away some of those vehicle lanes to use exclusively for transit, that's obviously going to result in more congestion, and there's still not going to be space to also include dedicated bicycle facility along the entire corridor. And then lastly, alternative 3, which is again the active transportation focus, so walking, biking, etc. This is really best for folks who want to take their kids out on a walk or a bike ride and really feel comfortable along the entire corridor. So we're providing that dedicated bicycle facility. So we're improving pedestrian comfort, we're improving bicycle level of traffic stress. There are numerous safety countermeasures proposed with this alternative, not quite to the level of alternative 2, but it does make a pretty significant reduction in crashes overall. And then better facilities, hopefully encouraging more people to walk and bike. However, obviously with that, when we're taking away lanes similar to alternative 2, we're obviously going to add some vehicle congestion here. And so with that, we also need to consider that that's going to reduce transit speeds as well. So not only people who are driving in their cars, but trying to get the bus service up and down this corridor would be a little trickier. Now to another part of our study. This is looking at connectivity across I-495, so going from Gallows Road across I-495 to the east and vice versa. So we're looking at 6 different options here, and I'll start with the southernmost option. This is by the Inova campus, getting across I-495 over and looping down to Gallows Road to the southern portion, just south of I-495. We have, again, all these detailed on the website, so you can really dive into the pros and cons of each of these and look at these in more detail. But essentially, this would be a pretty long loop, kind of coming from the backside of the ICPH building, and then kind of coming along parallel to I-485 South, and then connecting with Gallows Road. Options 2 and 3 are pretty similar in that they connect the backside of the ICPH campus, the Inova campus, to the Fairview Park Business Complex. And then going up to option 4, you can see we're connecting both sides of Route 50. So currently there's not a pedestrian or bicycle connection along Route 50 today. So this would provide access again from Fairview Park Drive across I-495 over to where the Yorktown Shopping Plaza is, and then over to Gallows Road via Gatehouse. Option 5 is a dedicated bridge for pedestrians and cyclists to use that's parallel to Lee Highway. So there is access there today, but again, all these options are showing dedicated access for pedestrian and bicyclists. So a much more comfortable, less stressful option for people to get across I-495. And then option 6, just north of that, again, would be providing access from an area proximate to the Dunloring Metro Station over to Shreve Road, which could eventually lead up to the WNOD Trail. And one thing we'll note is just north of the map, north of I-66, probably about half a mile up, is where there's the existing WNOD Trail bridge. So that's a pedestrian and bicycle bridge that's existing today. And so we're looking for feedback on these options. Again, much more detail online for you to look at. And our survey has all of these kind of detailed for you, and you can kind of pick and choose which ones you'd like. And we're looking to move forward with 2 or 3 of these to recommend with our comprehensive plan when we get to that stage. Go to the next slide. And so wrapping up here before we get into questions. So we started this back in the fall of 2022. We've already had a set of public meetings last summer/fall. That's when we had our first round to kind of cover existing conditions. Right now, we're looking for your feedback on what we've called our 3 alternatives, and then eventually we'll work up a preferred concept. So that could be a mixture of the 3 things that we've discussed here today. We'll get feedback via the survey and from comments here today and from our previous public meetings. And of course, we'll be looking at the analysis, which again is detailed online, to try to develop something that is sort of the best between all worlds here and makes the most sense for Gallows Road. And that would be our preferred concept. And finally, looking farther ahead to the spring of 2025, that's when we're hoping to publish the final report, get some comprehensive plan recommendations in front of the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, and move ahead with hopefully getting those approved and start looking at how we can implement very ambitious improvements to this corridor. And with that, again, I posted a link to the project website, but you can also see that here. And you can use your phone to scan the QR code that will take you directly to the survey. That survey is going to be running through the end of the year. And then we'll collect all the responses and work up a preferred alternative with your feedback. And then if you'd like to contact us directly, our emails are listed below, Nanditha and my email, or you can call us at the phone number below that. And now we'd be happy to take any questions or comments that you all have. Best way to do this would be to raise your hand. There should be an icon at the top of your screen to raise your hand, and then we can call on you individually and unmute your mics.
Right, thank you, Tim and Nanditha. So this is kind of the open session for anyone who has questions. If you have a comment, you can always type in the chat. If you want to say your comment, obviously it has some hands raised, so we'll start to go there. John, and you're going to be first. I'm going to unmute your microphone. Therefore, your microphone's enabled, so you have to unmute yourself, and then you're good to go.
Hello, can you all hear me?
You can.
Yeah, so my question is, if we're going with option 2, which was the one that had the bus transit lanes for the BRT system, I recognize that will still allow car lanes, will reduce the biking options, but allowing for more buses, more rapid transit that way. Is there options being looked at to add in last mile solutions? Because as anybody who lives here knows, there's a lot of suburban sprawl throughout the neighborhoods. The buses can't get to all of it. So would there be putting like city bike of racks of bikes around bus stops, or potentially bike lockers for people to get that last mile from their bus stop to their house?
Tim, you want that one?
Sure, yeah, that's a really great comment. So I know that there's a Capital Bike Share station at the Dunloring Metro, for example. And we have an active transportation team that's constantly looking at where we might be able to put these stations. We have a capital bike share coordinator who works exclusively on that. And so, yes, we definitely be looking into the improvements like that, looking at bike lockers where feasible. And that's a really important piece of this, because if we get transit through here, great, but we also need to connect people to transit. And so the first mile, last mile piece is definitely really important. So thanks for that comment.
Thank you, John.
Thank you all.
Next up is David Hitchman. Let me allow your microphone. Okay. Your microphone's enabled. You can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can.
There's great interest in my neighborhood, Holmes Run Acres, in Alternative 3, the biking and active transportation option, precisely because of this last mile issue. The whole corridor is within a 20-minute bike ride of the Dunloring Merrifield Metro, but right now it's impossible for us to access that station by bike. We really have to drive there. Bus rapid transit will make the station more reachable, but biking, especially with e-bikes and a dedicated cycle track, would really finally open doors for us, and it would, on a really bad traffic day, it would get us to the metro and a Mosaic district faster than driving. What I think we want to know is, how will bicyclists be protected from vehicles making left turns? In the Mosaic District area, there are signals everywhere someone would be making a left turn, but in Annandale, maybe parts of Dunloring, that won't always be the case. So, yeah, I think we're interested in hearing more about how conflicts would be reduced, but there's strong support for Alternative 3 in our community, as well as some support for Alternatives 1 and 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim, you want to grab that one?
Sure. Yeah, that's a really important concern that you raised. So cyclists traveling along the bike lanes that you can see there in Alternative 3, coming into conflicts with vehicles who are turning left. I think one thing that helps is having that center turn lane, and so cars don't have to feel the pressure right now that they feel of having someone right up behind you, kind of coming down Gallows Road and waiting to make that left turn. So I think that will help a little bit, but really the best thing is to signalize and have that control, and understanding that's not possible at every intersection on Gallows Road. We are looking at putting signals by Woodburn Elementary School, which would help. So at Aston and Hemlock, not only would that help in the transition for the cycle track, but also for kids getting to and from the school. So that's one thing that could make an improvement, but I do think that the center turn lane would help with that as well.
All right, thank you, Tim. All right, Susan, you're next. Let me enable your microphone.
Oh, hi.
Okay,
Sorry. Can you hear me?
You're good. Yes, you're good.
Hi. I'm on the board at the Colonies of Madrillen, and there's a lot of traffic coming from Gallows and Madrillen Road when you're trying to make a left, and you're on Madrillen Road trying to make a left onto Gallows, right across from Patsy's. I'm just wondering if there's any inclination of putting in a traffic stoplight there at that intersection. And I'm sorry if this is not relevant to your plan.
Oh, no, it's okay. We'll take all questions. Indita, do you have that?
So as part of what we have seen so far, like we do not have plans for signalizing that intersection, but we can look into that. We'll make a note of this comment and can look into the volumes.
Thank you. Yeah, I did receive something that because of there aren't enough accidents or there isn't enough traffic, but there actually is quite a lot of traffic right there, and there's a new development coming in of a bunch of, I think, townhomes next to Patsy's on Gallows Road. So there's going to be quite a bit more traffic coming in. So right in that jurisdiction there, that intersection, if you know what I'm referring to, right near the DMV.
Yes.
Gallows Road. I would really appreciate you looking into that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any way you post an update on your website, or how would I be able to access any future information regarding this.
So we're taking these comments down, and then as we can, we'll try to do a general Q&A response, and then be able to post them back up to the website. So that'll be kind of our next step, along with the results of the survey.
Okay, great. And I appreciate you considering that new development that's coming in as well. I think it would be very helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Next up, Kevin O'Brien. Okay, your microphone's enabled.
Great. Appreciate the presentation today, kind of going over, all the segments. Had a chance to stop by one of the open houses a couple weeks ago. And, I'll just sort of reiterate, a concern, particularly around the alternative 3, the active transportation element, but even alternative 1 to the extent that it includes bike lanes. And that is just, without sort of separation. I know in some of the segments, it's grade separated. You're going to put that bike facility up above the curb. But in some of the segments, right, even the bike element or the active transportation alternative, has that facility in the roadway without separation. And while that buffer is certainly helpful, it really all ages and abilities, requires some kind of physical separation between the traffic. I think particularly, we're obviously in the midst of, the county's in the midst of upgrading and redoing the active transportation plan. And, by my understanding, what the county is essentially signing up for would sort of preclude these exact kinds of unprotected facilities, by its own guidelines, that I certainly hope are enacted, sort of require, especially on a road that does see some higher speeds, is going to require some kind of physical separation, some kind of vertical element, and just curious how with that sort of becoming a new guiding document, how. I guess I'm just a little bit concerned that that this project, if it sort of like sneaks in before we get to that, we sort of lock in that active Fairfax changes, might open the door for sort of facilities that are going to be still not quite up to the standards that we know that the county is striving to, which is at all ages and abilities.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Tim. Do you want to take a quick shot at just kind of talking how this
Sure.
one relates and things?
Yeah, and we do show an option here that shows the facility off street. We're working with the active Fairfax team, so they're in our stakeholder group, and they made a similar comment, which is why we're showing that option B. And I think that's it. We ended up leaning more towards an active transportation focused alternative. I think that's probably the way we would go, given their guidance on it. But yes, you're certainly right. This would be the ideal, especially for all ages and abilities.
All right, thank you so much. We'll go to Sonia in a moment, but we're going to take one out of the chat. So how can those who live on Gallows Road better understand the impact of the expansion on residents? Indeed, did you want to give it a whirl?
Sure. So with all these alternatives, we are looking at minimum impact to properties and trying to stay within the existing right-of-way. And with alternatives 2 and 3, we are looking through our analysis some diversions to nearby roads and freeways. So there is some reduction in demand for Gallows Road with these 2 alternatives.
Okay. All right, so I'll pick that one up, and then I'll come back to the chat in just a moment. Sonia, your microphone is enabled. You can unmute yourself.
Great. Thanks so much. I appreciate this online opportunity to sort of look at I wasn't able to attend the northern and the middle segments. And so taking a look at those, I guess in the northern segment, well, a couple things. I want to say first, I think it's really important to make sure we're planning for the transit element in this corridor. I know that it's set up here as being 3 different sort of alternatives, but I really think it's going to be imperative that we have BRT running through this corridor that's really going to serve to connect Annandale, Merrifield, and into Tysons into the future. We're going to have to figure out how to more efficiently move people through this corridor, and even your assessment sort of speaks to that, the bus route that runs along Gallows already is one of the top in the counties, well used, that with these transit improvements, according to the study, that we would see an improvement of 10% in ridership, and this gives folks alternatives to having to drive through the corridor. So inherently, you're moving more people through this corridor. So I really think that really ought to be a priority. I struggle because active transportation is so badly needed in this corridor as well. And I understand that there are these trade-offs, but we need to make biking and walking in all of these areas much better over current conditions. And we really need to figure out how to make transit and bike ped work together. So what I was going to say on the northern segment is looking at the transit alternative. You have the on-road bike lanes, which is great, and there's a little buffer. But I noticed that the shared use path that's completely separated, that we currently have, we would not have that. We would have just 5-foot sidewalks. And I noticed also that there's this 13-foot median down the middle. I wonder what the 13-foot median is for. Can that be narrowed? Can we get a shared use path at least on one side, along with the bike lanes? Because I think when we're talking all ages, and Kevin was already talking about the need for hardened facilities when we're on road, kids aren't going to ride on Gallows just with a painted line buffer. And I think a shared use path that runs alongside will be needed, even if we do have on-road bike facilities. And again, I'm looking at the transit alternative. So that was one thing that I wanted to ask about. I have another question related to the further south in the corridor. I don't know if we want to answer this one and allow me to ask the next one, or if I should ask both of them now.
Why don't you hold on for a moment? Let's take this one and then we'll go to your next one.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I can jump in on this one. So for the median, that'll also be where we have the left turn lane. So we do need to sort of hold that space. But yeah, when we look at the preferred alternative, I think that's a comment that we have heard about sort of having something off street for folks to walk and bike, because you're right, there is that shared use path on the east side currently. And so maybe we look at taking from one side so that we can build a wider path on the other, or sort of reducing that median if possible, reducing that median / turn lane if possible, to try to fit that in. But of course, that's going to come at the expense of other elements. So trying to find a balance, I think, is what we'll get with the preferred alternative, because you're absolutely right. It doesn't really hit the all ages and abilities mark with alternative 2.
And Sonia, do you want to ask your second question?
Yeah, sure thing. I had asked it during the Southern segment meeting, and I guess I wanted to come back to it because I was just thinking about the crossings over the Beltway. But my particular interest right now is, what type of improvements are you considering? Not the separated bike ped bridges, but like on Gallows crossing the Beltway, down close to the Shar Cancer Center and the Nova Hospital, that side of things, where there's missing sidewalk connections, there's some sidewalks, and there's lots of turn lanes. So, separate from having a bike ped bridge that runs next to that crossing, are there improvements that you're planning as part of this study to the sidewalk and bike connections along Gallows Road across the Beltway on that bridge? I guess that's it. Are you looking at specific improvements to connect across the bridge, across the Beltway there?
Sure. If we could go down to the slide that shows the crossings, and then we can kind of point to where you're speaking of.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yep. So looking, Andy, if you can use your cursor to highlight. Yeah, right below that, on Gallows Road is what you're talking about, right? So where the interchange is, and currently on the north side there's a gap. So if you were walking along northbound Gallows Road trying to get up to the hospital crossing I-495, you're missing sidewalk right by the Dominion station. So we look at certainly trying to fill that in, but it is a very tricky space to add in additional facilities given that there's so much activity there. So that is something that we need to look at a little closer. We'd want to, of course, try to, when we did a bike audit a while back and biked the whole corridor, and that was a problem spot, getting across that interchange. So I think at least we could do something where we're signaling to drivers rather that this is where bicyclists and pedestrians are also crossing. So whether that's with flashing lights or more signage, but long story short, we'll have to look into that a bit more to see how we can make improvements there.
All right. Thank you so much. I just want to remind people that what we're doing is looking to kind of change the comprehensive plan. Currently the comprehensive plan for Gallows Road north of I-66 has 6 lanes on it. So recognizing that's probably really not an improvement that we'd want to move forward with, we're looking to see how we can kind of change the plan recommendations to kind of better match facilities that allow more people to have more options within this particular corridor, all the way from the northern end to the southern end. So I just kind of wanted to remind people kind of where we're trying to go with this. And we'll, through feedback, mix and match as much as we can to try to be as responsive to the community comments and kind of still trying to meet the objectives and goals for the corridor. With that, I'm going to, Chris, Norris, you're next. I'm going to allow your microphone. You're good to unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you for that. Great presentation. I know a lot of work has been put into this. I have 2 questions, one about time frame and a kind of administrative question, and the other about a certain point on this road. So I'll begin with the point first. On the corner of Gallows and Annandale, there's the Westminster School, and I travel Gallows up to 495 for work, and I know sometimes it's a race course kind of up by 495 and past that point. But specifically around Westminster, there's a lot of cars that wait in the drop off and pickup line. Have there been any conversations with the school or with the community to address potentially cars kind of sitting on the side of the shoulder and how that might affect any of the plans for that area?
We haven't spoken directly with that school, but I know exactly what you're talking about. We've observed that sort of on the northern side of where Gallows and Annandale split. That school has a lot of cars stacking up there. So yeah, we certainly need to look at how we could control that while also putting in the bike facilities that we want.
Yeah, because I know that there's the bike unprotected bike lane there, and I think cars just kind of sit in it, and when it's not really safe to bike on a road, not too many bikers take it, so that's why there's not a lot of bikers to begin with. But yeah, I would appreciate that. And then the second question I had is more the administrative side. So I know you guys are doing all these open houses and virtual meetings and coordinating and collecting all the information and then presenting to the board. When that is presented to the board, would that also include potential cost estimates, time frame estimates, like high or low ranking of impact to the potential traffic flow or impact to communities? And then is that funded, or would the board have to vote to approve the projects based upon if funding is available?
All right. Aditya, you want to take the first part of that?
Sure.
Thanks, Chris.
So after we get the feedback from this round of outreach, like I mentioned, we will have a preferred concept, and for the preferred concept, we will develop cost estimates. So when we have the board approval, so we'll have short-term and long-term improvement recommendations. And once we get the board approval and have these cost estimates, we'll start to apply for state and local funds. And as in when the funds are available, we will have to prioritize the improvements based on the feedback that we've received and also in the board. So those are the next steps.
All right. Thank you. Nandita, can you repeat the instructions again for how to unmute yourself on the phone? Phone number, last 4 digits, 9157. I'm going to unmute you, but you have to enable your microphone. Is it *5 or *6?
Yeah, it's *5 to raise the hand, but you should push *6.
Okay. Unless you don't have a question. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, hi.
Hi, my name is Masoud Norbaksh. I would like to second the comments and question that was posed earlier by a nice lady regarding Madelon Road. I live off of that road, and we are concerned about the traffic at the intersection of Madelon Road and Gallows Road where D&B is. And I'm personally wondering if we could put a traffic light in that intersection.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take a look at that as part of our study. We'll note the comment, and we will see how that can be addressed. As Nandita said, we do have kind of short and long-term kind of improvements. We're looking at this study, so we'll kind of see how all these are put together. If there are other means of addressing some of the issues identified through this study, then we'll try to put those forward as well. So it is a rather comprehensive one, so we do understand not everything can be done at once, so we'll have to definitely see how we can put things together. I'll go back to questions from the chat in just a moment, but Griffin Frank, your microphone's enabled. You can go for it.
Mike, this is Griffin Frank. I'm a transportation planner over at the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, but I'm leaving comments as a resident of Fairfax County. This is no indication of the stance from NVTA. Our office is right next to the Dunloring station, and I often use Gallows Road as a bicycling commuter from the W&D just north of 66. And I just want to make sure we remember that that is a pretty big intersection across Gallows Road that many cyclists and people exercising, people running, people who depend on that trail use to cross Gallows. And I just want to make sure, I know that trail is owned by Nova Parks, just to make sure we're still collaborating with Nova Parks to, while we're improving Gallows Road, just make sure that connection to the W&D trail is considered and improved as well, because I'll sit there for minutes on end just waiting for that light to change. And then once you're on Gallows Road, it is a tough bike ride that I wouldn't suggest for everyone. I say that, but I'll also say that as a bike commuter, I'll still opt for option or alternative 2, which is transit, because I also know that Gallows Road is a very unique road, that it connects the Silver Line up in Tysons down to the Orange Line at Dunloring. And I know there's a lot of people that live in Loudoun County and can connect to the Silver Line, and right now they don't think it makes sense to ride all the way down to East Falls Church to get over to the Dunloring Merrifield area. And I think with this connection of a dedicated BRT along Gallows Road, that would make that trip now make sense. You're not backtracking anymore. You're making a more direct route, and that can alleviate, a lot of congestion in Loudoun County, and also in the Vienna area where those folks want to get to Tyson's, and now it would make sense for them to ride that BRT more directly. So no questions for me. It's just a couple comments that I just hope to have folks remember when we're looking to improve this Gallows Road section. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Next up is Isabella Salas. I'm going to enable your microphone. You're good to go. If you can unmute.
Hi, everyone. Let me know if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Awesome. Thanks for having this online. As someone who doesn't have a car, I couldn't get to the other sessions. I mean, I could if I tried, but it's more convenient for me to have it online. And I think that some of the improvements would make me want to walk more along Gallows Road. So I live across the Dunn-Loring station. And so the middle segment is really important for us as we're walking to Mosaic District. We usually don't walk, actually, because the streets, the sidewalks kind of narrow and the traffic is so intense along Gallows going south to Mosaic. And so I'm also wondering about lighting specifically along this segment, because it feels super, super unsafe as you're walking to where the Lidl is between there and to Mosaic. It's really hard to want to make that walk, especially when it gets dark out, and especially considering the speed of traffic here. And so I would totally love to see any of these buffers between the sidewalk and the cars, and then also having these dedicated bike lanes would be super helpful too, because there is a city bike stop right next to the Dunn-Loring station, and so that would make me more willing to use the bikes there too when it's hot outside and I don't feel like walking. So yeah, I have just specifically that question about the lighting too, because that would really help as a pedestrian to make sure that cars aren't, if a car ever runs off of the road, which is something I think about in my disaster brain, I want them to know that there's a pedestrian right there.
Thank you. Tim, do you want to talk about lighting at all?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point that you brought up. And with the buffer, like you mentioned, we would have space to put some pedestrian scale lighting. I think that's what's really important, is having lighting that is at the pedestrian level. And again, like you said, makes it more comfortable for people to walk here. That's really what we're looking at in all these alternatives, is trying to enhance comfort, not only by widening sidewalks, putting in street trees, but pedestrian scale lighting is another important element of that. And so when we look at making recommendations in our report, that would definitely be something that we'd be pushing for as well.
All right. Next up is Kathy. I'm going to butcher your last name, so I'm not going to try. It starts with an A. I'm just going to allow your microphone.
Yeah, it's Kathy Alsagaff.
Thank you.
And I'm in the northern section, so I don't know if we can go to that slide. I have a couple questions. One, it's not clear to me, and maybe I missed it, but for all of these alternatives, are you actually widening? Will you be taking land by eminent domain? And I'm not clear on that.
No, we are trying to be within the existing right of way and avoiding impacts to the properties along the corridor.
Yeah, and then I guess on the alternative 2 and 3, where the bicyclists are next to the lane of traffic on this one, and there's not that extra buffer with trees. Will there in any of those be, and I don't know what the technical term is, but those kind of like flexible bollards, like they have a lot of them in downtown DC, because I ride my bike in this area, and there's one curve right where Mary Oaks comes into to Gallows, where every time the cars drive over the bike lane the way the curve is. Like, I just have to be really careful there. You know, it's not like I feel unprotected the entire bike lane, but that curve specifically. And so would there be areas where, even though they're not separated, that they might have a few places where you might consider it, if we go with alternative 2 or 3, installing those temporary type bollards? And then the one thing I would point out, I would worry about with alternative 2, because I live near Kilmer, and when it's drop off time and pick up time, you know, for whatever reason, you know, there are so many people who drop their kids off, and I've seen a lot of bad behavior at that time, and I worry with alternative 2, the backup's already bad from Gallows turning onto Wolf Trap, and if you have alternative 2, I don't know what would happen in the mornings, and I'd be curious if that type of thing was looked at.
Sure. Tim, do you want to address the flex post first?
Yeah, that's a really good comment on the flex posts. So those would be what would go in the buffer. We're not showing them here, but certainly that's something we could look at installing. Currently, we have some installed. If you're familiar with the Vienna metro station, there's a cycle track there that has flex posts. So, yeah, that'd be a really important element to include. I know exactly what you're talking about on that curve. I wouldn't feel comfortable biking there either. So good comment on that. And then kind of speaking to the next one about Kilmer, that's something we'll have to coordinate with the schools on. One thing that a lot of people have raised is sort of the enforcement issue and changing driver behavior. So we'll have to coordinate with FCPD on that, and we've already started sort of speaking with them on another issue. But yeah, we're definitely looking at trying to minimize impacts to schools and pick up and drop off as well.
Thank you, Tim. Next up, and I haven't forgot about the chat, so we'll grab those in just a moment. Kevin O'Brien, your microphone's enabled.
Yeah, thanks again. I just had a follow-up question. I know we've had several of us, on this call have touched on active transportation elements, and I don't want to dismiss the potential here for the alternative 2 in the transit. And I'm just curious, what y'all's engagement strategy has been. Have you been able to connect with folks who are using these routes? I know you mentioned these are some of the highest traffic routes in the county. And I just ask that because, I think, anecdotally, users of transit tend to be, lower income, likely, maybe less likely to be able to come to, say, an open house or even a virtual open house at, say, on a random Thursday. And, I just want to make sure that this does have some really, a lot of potential, and just wanting to better understand what you've been hearing from transit users before you sort of go back to the drawing board and begin to sift through all of this feedback and sort of come up with a sort of a compromise design that incorporates things, ensuring that obviously this corridor is going to continue to be a major transit corridor. How do you manage to reach those community members who maybe can't be with us on this call, or those community members who are taking the bus as is?
All right, thanks. Tim, do you want to go for it? And I can chime in, Aditya. We can also do with you too.
Sure. Yeah, we're definitely looking for more outreach opportunities. We went to Farmers Market, for example, for the last round of public meetings. Supervisor's office are putting out kind of alerts in their newsletters, and we're trying to push this as much as we can, giving different options, virtual and evening options. But certainly looking for any feedback that you all have. If you know of communities or different events in your community that you think we could go to and really increase engagement, we'd be happy to continue to push for that.
All right. real quick, just so I can pull some of the questions off the chat, will the final plan be the same option of choice for all segments, or will each segment have its own final? As we said, it'll be a mix of whatever kind of works. If every single segment chooses the same one, then it might look more uniform, but there might be elements from one that works for the other, and maybe we mix and match two elements on a particular segment. So again, we're really looking for the you all take the survey and give us the most feedback possible to really, that's really going to help shape this along with the public engagement that Tim was talking about. Okay, Uma Khan, your microphone's enabled. Want to unmute yourself.
Thank you. I live in the northern segment, so just speaking on behalf of a resident, as a resident here, I just want to note that I feel the study does not address three big issues I think on all segments of Gallows Road, and these have been raised. One is speed, two is traffic lights, and three is lighting. I think even with all these three alternatives, if those basic foundational issues are not addressed, we will still continue to see a lot of the issues. I know in the northern segment, for example, speed is a massive issue. I think someone earlier mentioned their fear of a car flying off the road. That did happen close to the WNOD trail, and no amount of barriers can prevent the damage that's caused by something like that. And thankfully it was at night, so no pedestrians were injured. But the way the road curves across this part of Gallows Road, and there are no speeding or signals or any repercussions for drivers that are not from this area is very, very dangerous. Also, traffic lights, not having traffic lights is a huge issue. I know in front of Stenwood Elementary, that's something that's under discussion and still has not been addressed. And also lights, as was mentioned in many areas. I also want to note, and you might be aware that the Dunloring School will be open in the next few years. That will add much more traffic to this area, much more foot traffic, as well as much more car traffic. So I think that needs to be taken into very close consideration for this segment. And I think, BRT would be great. But just adding that also to what is going to become a high traffic area because of school, I think that needs to be considered. And I bike, I walk a lot, I take the bus, I drive as well. So I utilize all the different things we have available. But I just want to reiterate this issue around speed, traffic lights, and lights really needs to be taken into consideration and was not really reflected in the study. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Tim, do you want to address speed real fast?
Yeah. So, and we didn't go into too much detail today, but if you go on the website and look at some of the presentations, the in-person ones we gave, the slides are posted online. We talked specifically about safety. That is something that we're trying to curb is the speeding here. One way that we can do that is through traffic calming, so narrowing the lanes, for example. Here you see 10-foot lanes, 11-foot lanes, so narrowing those from what is existing today. Also adding street trees. So we show street trees on the sides of the sidewalks here, but people have also mentioned, possibly putting them in the median where we can, and that would almost create like a tunnel effect. So if you're driving along Gallows Road today, it's wide open, you've got open lanes to just kind of speed along. That's what people do. But putting in some of these other elements and the bike lanes and the bus lanes will get people to realize, hopefully, that they're sharing this road with other users and they do need to slow down. So that is something that we're definitely taking a close look at.
All right, thank you, Tim. Last hand raised right now. I know we're over time. We'll go a little bit longer. Whitney Redding, let me give you a chance because you've been patient. So, your microphone's enabled.
Oh, hi. Thank you. Whitney, Friends of Holmes Run, but also part of Friends of Atkinson Creek. So, two thoughts. One is just to put it into the record, because I think I've had casual conversations after the previous meeting, but not formally put it in there. If you could show the 6 alternative crossings for bike ped of the Beltway. Yeah. So can you remind me which of those 2 are already proffered? I'm trying to remember. Can you hear me?
Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Can you? Yeah. You got it.
Sorry, windy day, unstable connection. Which of those two options again are already proffered, I believe?
Option.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you take
Yeah,
it.
ICPH, the Inova campus. So options 2 and 3.
Okay. So, so the one thing I want to make clear is one time I did go walk through that area along the right-of-way for the power lines between 1 and 3, I think it was. And it was interesting to see just how much of a wetland there is in a sunken area. So it's a little hard to tell from a map like this, but I want to know just like what is the way that gets addressed, so that, I mean, it's because it's a right-of-way that belongs to, I guess, Dominion Power, but it's also a stream valley, but it's also Fairview Park. So it's not like I expect you to be able to sort that out this minute, but I wanted to just be in the loop on how that goes forward because of the obvious implications for the wetlands and the wildlife. The second thing I wanted to point out is whatever you do on Gallows in that section, that lower to middle section, it needs to take into account the fact that the neighborhoods around it have stormwater problems. And so I know I mentioned this once before, but I really do want to emphasize, because I'm probably the only one thinking of that there, it can only help if the neighbors there both get the assurances that this will help, at least to keep water from rushing into Accotink or into Holmes Run and therefore flooding downstream. So to be mindful and thoughtful about that, incorporating that early on in your thinking, not as an afterthought. And then the second thing is, I know that a lot of people are concerned about how their kids are going to get from, say, Holmes Run Acres or Hummer Woods to the Gallows Road corridor, where there's a lack of sidewalks. So, I just wanted to raise that up a millionth time, because I think that's a very valid point. And I really love options 2 and 3. The more stormwater control, the better, but and the more bike ped safety, the better. But this is also part of the equation, so I don't want it to be lost.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right.
Thanks.
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to quickly through the comments in the chat. And if you left a comment, we have it. Great. I'm just going to try to pull the questions out. Let me see here. Just wanted to ask, can you show a slide which represents the reconfiguration of the intersection of Hemlock at Gallows to accommodate traffic signal, and same for Aston at Gallows? I don't know, Edith, if we have that in the back tray.
Not sure. Let me see.
Tim, did we include it in our online video?
Not in the online one. It's only with the southern segment, so it's
Okay.
probably not in this one.
So we do have all the presentations posted as well. So if you go to our southern segment, where you can probably got access to this, you can look for it in that particular slide deck, and it will be there. That shows kind of the reconfiguration of how signals work there. Let me see here. So we have your comment about how about pop-up and outreach events at bus stops. We can continue to try to get the word out there as best we can. We'll reconvene after this and see if we've gotten the public outreach that we think is deserving of this type of study. Are we going to have public meetings to piggyback on conversation about community access? Having meetings on teams or farmers markets certainly cater to a certain community. So I will say we started off these meetings in person as well, to try to build kind of input and have people kind of come and hear the presentations where we could get more information out there. This is just kind of meant to be the Q&A kind of for anyone who wasn't able to make it. But please go back and look at the videos, look at the presentations, and take the survey. Let us know your comments. It's not to say we're done with this. I'm just letting you know kind of what we've done. Let's see here. With BRT, is the frequency of the buses expected to be increased? Andita? Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely with if BRT is chosen as a preferred alternative, we would be looking at increasing the frequency of the buses.
Okay, there's a question here about us looking at something related to an active transportation plan, and we will definitely look at that to see how it comes into this study. Whitney, I see your hand up. Well, me here. Okay, you can unmute.
That was me not realizing I needed to manually lower my hand, so I shall do
sorry. No, thanks. Okay. I'll do it for you. There you go. Okay, that's what I see in the chat. We have your questions, your comments for sure. I didn't go through all of it. I just wanted to make sure we hit the questions. Again, the survey closes at the end of the month, and we really are kind of looking forward to see what kind of feedback you have. Please spread this word among your community. We'll continue to have both district offices kind of push it out in any sort of newsletters that come out and kind of remind you all to kind of please take this. But best input comes from word of mouth from everyday people, just kind of having conversations, maybe over the holidays or kind of as you see people passing. Tim, Nindy, is there any last thing we want to add on?
Thank you all for joining, and like Mike mentioned, please do take the survey and pass the word around. And if you have any further questions or comments, please reach out to me or Tim.
We appreciate all the helpful comments in the chat as well. So thank you. When we end this meeting, the chat will kind of close for everyone who's not county staff. But again, as you can please kind of submit those same comments through the survey as well. That's where we kind of gather all this stuff and are able to kind of decipher it. So again, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. Everyone have a good rest of the day.
Thank you all.